any kind of commitment to organizational change. In this continuum, we got a difference between unable all the way to able. So above the line, these people are able for transformation, these people are not. And what this particular quadrant tells you is that you can place people somewhere on this continuum and somewhere on this continuum, which puts them in one of those quadrants. And we're going to show you in the next couple slides what you do with people who are in that area. You can probably think about individuals in your organization. You might be able to apply your metric on your 5 domains into this, that there's certain measures on those measures of those 5 domains might put you in a certain place. Because certainly an attitude has a lot to do with that. People who are perceptive but divided and ambivalent, we say they've got the ability because they see it and understand it, but they aren't what? They don't collaborate and work together or work toward a common vision. Those who are highly able and committed at the same time they're versatile and integrated. Those are the people that create the learning culture or learning community, and there's a different strategy of helping work with those. This could be part of your action plan too if you chose to do so. Now if you're inept but cooperative, you probably can think, what would you do with those individuals or that individual if you're looking at one-on-one? If they're inept but they're willing, then you just train them. If they're fixated, fragmented, or resistance, now you have a whole different problem. They're probably as inept in some aspects, but they're resistant to any transformation, so there's a different strategy for that. So think about yourself for just a second. Where are you in terms of your willingness and your ability to lead an organization? I see it as being above the line and to the right of the line. I think I've seen enough of your work. I've heard you talk enough about yourselves and what you're doing in schools. I think that there's no doubt that you wouldn't be in a graduate program if you weren't willing and able to do some of those things. Now, where you fall between here and here, it might be a different instance.
Is it the goal to have everybody in that quadrant?
Well,
because I don't ever see that happening.
I think so. I think some of that depends, where would you like to be as a leader? Some of us would feel very comfortable in this quadrant because that's, you're going to see in a little bit, you're basically providing resource, don't be a stumbling block to success, but supporting and coaching and cheerleading. Some of us might be a little more intrigued with this. We feel like we can help build skills if people are cooperative with it. We might feel more comfortable in this area. It gives us a different day-to-day workplace. So I don't know. I think ultimately we want a learning culture. I don't know how far along the continuum it might be. Some of them will be pretty tough in terms of unable and unwilling at the same time is tough to deal with. But I would personally rather deal with this group than those who are able but unwilling. To me, these are the hardest to motivate because something is causing them to be unwilling to do that, whether it's personal or some experience they had along the way. But let's look at what these strategies mean. And the first strategy is on the fragmented and resistance, which falls here. We're talking about in quadrant 1. Relentlessly presenting factual information that says the status quo will not work. Deal with the naysayers, set forth required performance criteria, modeling the belief system, replacing people who do not have the potential to build, acquiring and reallocating materials and resources. So again, they're unwilling and unable. So this is what we have to do to them. So we're not throwing them off to the wayside necessarily. We have strategies to deal with that. This one-on-one with the naysayers is tough. And we have to continually model those belief systems and continually sell that vision we have in place. All right, quadrant 2, inept but cooperative. So we're looking at people who are willing but unable to do. Present factual information, same as we had before. No, I'm sorry. Persuasive and enthusiastic communication of the vision. Advocating the vision through discussions, modeling again, interacting with and encouraging, institute performance systems, educate and train future key players, replacing people who do not have the skills, restructuring, reorganizing those parts of the organization that are not aligned with the vision. Now, are you starting to put people's pictures in your mind as it relates to where they fall and what you need to go back and do with them? And if you have a predominant group in that quadrant, then you've got a group activity to deal with. I think this is great information in terms of what do I do on a daily basis to help think about how to build this culture. Now, perceptive and divided and ambivalent, this is that toughest group. Placing trust in their skills, insights, experience, and values, or put them in responsible situations. Find some key place for them. It gives them ownership. It gives them insight into the purpose and your design of this transformation. You got to continue to look at this vision and make sure it's well understood and model that vision. Interacting with individuals group to facilitate self-management. Because these are people who are smart and just may not be able to manage themselves at all if they're divided. And then begin to put in some team activities or some learning community activities. Now that learning community, that we might say that's where we're trying to get everybody to. Inviting individuals to contribute significantly, continue to sustain that learning environment. Monitoring decisions and plans for design and implementation of strategies. Be available to give advice, opinion, and support. Don't just take charge of that and give that out and to let them ask for that. Let it come up in discussions. Be that Jim Collins who can ask some of those good questions. Linking the external environment to facilitate the achievement. So we're finding those support systems outside of your school that you could bring to the school to help build even more of this learning culture. Again, this could be, you could actually use some of this in your action planning in terms of this might be a strategy. There's ways or programs to address these particular strategies. Going on with developmental readiness, access to comprehensive services, that's tied into some of those strategies we designed, especially the last one for that particular quadrant. Teachers use a wide variety of instructional strategies to foster curiosity, exploration, creativity, and the development of social skills, especially fostering curiosity. If we're curious about things, we'll get down in it and discover and determine what it tells us and what we need to know. Curriculum is socially significant and relevant to the personal interests of young adolescents. Teachers make connections across disciplines to help reinforce important concepts and address real-world problems. Multiple opportunities for students to explore a rich variety of topics and interests. So we're keeping that inquiry nature alive with chances to explore their interests. Students have opportunities for voice, posing questions, reflecting, developing rubrics, and participating in the decisions. So that goes back to what we're doing in the organization in terms of making sure all learners are participating in developing the strategies or the activities or the experiences that allow us to learn. We need to develop alliances with families to enhance and support the well-being of their children. Families as partners in the children's education. So here again could be a strategy in addressing the empowerment issue or addressing those particular practices that creates that attitude of empowering people to contribute to the learning. School provides students with opportunities to develop citizenship skills, uses community as a classroom, and engages community providing resources and support. Age-appropriate co-curricular activities. You wouldn't think of building a culture with that, but age-appropriate in terms of the developmental responsiveness and developmental needs of the learner and what is age appropriate for that individual in a co-curricular setting that reinforces what they're learning in the classroom. Another piece of this culture will be social equity within the organization. Expecting high quality work from all students, not just high quality work from certain learners or the high performing students. Committed to helping each. Evidence of this commitment includes tutoring, mentoring, special adaptations, and other supports. We tend sometimes to water down or even water down the assessment of those learners who need a little more help and not requiring high quality work. Many and varied approaches to achievement and demonstrate competence and mastery of the standards themselves. We see that in our Common Core assessments, that there's not a separation of what's expected of different levels of learning or different levels of learners. The school will continue to adapt curriculum, instruction, assessment, and scheduling to meet its students' diverse and changing needs. So that's socially equitable. It's social, there's a social responsibility. Equal access to valued knowledge in all school classes and activities. We do it sometimes pretty openly in terms of how we sort and separate kids. We do it in some situations how we allow students to choose their subjects or choose their place. And we do it with parents by not encouraging or allowing parents to be fully involved. Equal access to valued knowledge. We tend sometimes to take our those higher learners to a higher level of knowledge and to a higher level source of knowledge, and limit what we allow those struggling learners to have access to. Ongoing opportunities to learn about and appreciate their own and others' cultures. School values knowledge from the diverse cultures represented in the school. This is, as it is reflected in our curriculum, as it is reflected in our assessments, as it is reflected in our everyday experiences that should facilitate learning. Each child's voice is heard, acknowledged, and respected. School welcomes and encourages the active participation of all families, demonstrates its values and diversity, civility, service, and democratic citizenship. Some say we're losing this skill of democratic citizenship because of electronics and electronic means that we have. We're losing that inability to communicate and socialize. Therefore, we're losing the opportunity to make decisions even about who our friends are or what groups we associate ourselves with, which becomes contrary to the democratic process. The faculty is culturally and linguistically diverse. We know that's becoming more and more important. Suspension rate is low in proportion to the student population, which means we aren't suspending those kids from certain populations. Now we say a lot of this is driven by student behaviors, and we understand that, but in true transformation toward a more learning culture, we begin to look at the reasons for that as they relate to theoretical behavior, not just relate to behavior of an individual or a group. Our structures and processes are set up with a shared vision with a high-performing school and drives every facet of school change. So this again is similar to what we looked at in one of our 5 domains in terms of the importance of the structures themselves. You need a group or some individuals in the school that has responsibility and authority to hold the school improvement enterprise together, including day-to-day know-how, coordination, strategic planning, and communication. We do this through school improvement teams. We may have leadership teams or leadership groups, lead teachers. I would suggest that you rotate this around, at least designate this to different individuals and give some authority and responsibility to different ones on different occasions. This is a monitoring system as much as it is a leadership position too. In this structure, it's a community of practice where learning, experimentation, reflection are the norm. We can't say enough about this piece on reflection about us as well as the learners we have.